Good evening and welcome to the Village Board meeting. I'd like to call to order Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting of Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Soul, please call the roll.
President Polk.
Here.
Trustee Clarity.
Here.
Trustee Evans.
Here.
Trustee Koss.
Here.
Trustee Gallegos.
Here.
Trustee Marjazga.
Here.
Trustee Mateo.
Here.
Manager Francis.
Here.
Attorney Pickrell.
Here.
Also present Clerk Soul.
We have a full quorum for this evening's meeting. President's report. Upcoming meetings include the following. October 7th, the Sesquicentennial Committee Open House at the Riverside Public Library, 1 Burling Road. This is an open house. The public is invited and encouraged to attend, as our Sesquicentennial Committee has been working all year to prepare for the 150th anniversary of the Village of Riverside, and they want to get feedback from the public on this. So again, that's October 7th at the Public Library, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Public Library, October 7th. Other more routine village meetings. October 8th, Landscape Advisory Commission in the Township Hall, room 22. October 10th, Police Pension Board, Township Hall, room 22. Also October 10th, Preservation Commission, Township Hall, room 4. October 17th is our next village board meeting. That'll be a regular meeting here in this same room. Upcoming events include the final farmers market of the season will be next Wednesday, October 9th, 2:30 to 7 p.m. I do want to take this, since this is the last market of the year, I want to take this opportunity to recognize the farmers market volunteers, and especially our market manager, Amy Jaksic, who works tirelessly all year to ensure a successful market. I'm sure all those who attend the market have seen her there. Please take the time to thank Amy as you see her around town. October 10th, Trunk or Treat from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Pine Avenue, followed by the Tower Lighting and Costume Parade. This event is free to the public. And again, that's by the train station on Pine Avenue, 5 to 6:30 p.m., October 10th. October 26th, Haunted House at the Scout Cabin, 417 Fairbank Road, 3 to 5 p.m. Less spooky, and then the really spooky, 5:30 to 7:30, again at the Scout Cabin. This event does require advanced registration, and registration is currently open. Reminder to everyone that early voting for the November 5th general election begins on Monday, October 21st, and concludes on Monday, November 4th, the day before the election. If you need to register to vote, please check the Cook County Board of Elections website, or you can contact Village Clerk Ethan Soul at the Riverside Village Hall, and he can assist you with registering to vote. On that November 5th ballot is an important referendum question for Riverside residents. The referendum question asks voters if they would like to replace a property tax for expiring street bonds with an equal tax levy that will continue to be dedicated for street maintenance and improvements. The question on the ballot may be a bit confusing. It's mandated by the state of Illinois, but approval of the referendum will simply replace a bond levy with a regular tax levy. The amount paid by property owners for the new tax levy will be the same as what property owners have been paying for the bond levy. In other words, approval will not increase your property tax, but will simply continue the current amount of property tax paid for streets. The village board will be hosting a town hall meeting regarding the street tax levy referendum on Tuesday, October 15th at 7 p.m. at the Quincy Community Center, located at 43 East Quincy Street. The town hall is open to everyone. Encourage everyone to attend, to become educated about this important topic that's before you, the voters. This town hall will serve as an opportunity for the board and village staff to inform and answer questions regarding the village's referendum, which will appear again on the November 5th ballot. Additional information is also available on our website, and I would encourage anyone looking for more information to contact our village staff, Village Manager Jessica Francis, Finance Director Yvette Zavala, or myself. Our contact information is on the village website. So thank you very much, and again, I hope you are able to attend the Tuesday, October 15th Town Hall meeting, 7 p.m. Quincy Community Center. That concludes the President's report. Manager Francis.
Thank you. As we continue with our financial planning for fiscal year 2025 and beyond, and with the upcoming referendum, I wanted to note that village staff has modified the street resurfacing map for the 10-year capital improvement plan. Should the tax levy referendum that would provide funding for streets not pass in November. The streets that were noted to be completed in year 10 would then be resurfaced in approximately year 15 at the earliest. This means the 10-year plan for street improvements will take approximately 15 years to complete. If we are targeting to resurface a street within 20 years, it is expected that we would not be able to resurface that street until year 30 or beyond. So once again, it's important to understand this referendum and the different implications it has on future infrastructure improvements. I also want to note that the budget and tax levy items will continue to be on the agenda through December. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you, Manager Francis. Now it's time for resident comments on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for anyone, any resident or anyone in the village to appear before the board and address items that are not on our agenda. Agenda items, we will ask for public comment as we open each agenda item tonight. Is there anyone in the audience? I see no one in the audience to address the board, so we will move on to the consent agenda. Clerk Zoll.
Approve voucher list of bills, October 3rd, 2024. Approve Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, September 19th, 2024. Approve Village Board of Trustees executive session meeting minutes, September 19th, 2024. Review and file board and commission minutes. Economic Development Commission regular meeting, June 10th, 2024. Historical Commission regular meeting, June 24th, 24. Parks and Recreation Board regular meeting, August 26th, 2024. Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting, August 28th, 2024. A resolution adopting the update of the Cook County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. A resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a first amendment to the contract with Barry Dunn, McNeil, and Parker LLC services related to conducting a community survey, Parks and Program Assessment, and Parks and Recreation Department Master Plan for the Village of Riverside, Illinois. An ordinance amending various sections of Title IX of the Village Code of the Village of Riverside relative to parking. A resolution appointing a representative and alternate to the governing board of the North Suburban Employee Benefit Cooperative. And a resolution to change the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund authorized agent for the Village of Riverside.
Thank you, Clerk Zoll. Do any of these items need to be removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
So seconded.
Motion by first and second. Clerk Zoll, please call the roll.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Motion carries. Department, board, and commission reports. Tonight we have a report from Clerk Ethan Soul regarding the Sesquicentennial Planning Commission update. I just got to start calling it the Riverside 150.
Riverside 150 update, it should have been called. Good evening. So I just wanted to provide a brief update on the committee's activities since May when we last presented in front of the village board. So we've met 4 times since the last village board update, and we've discussed the following items. So we've been discussing a legacy project The committee has held preliminary discussions about seeking donations for a legacy or public improvement project during 2025 in remembrance or honor of the Riverside 150. Ideas currently under consideration include a gazebo, a basketball court, or a planting project. This discussion is ongoing, and the committee plans to bring a final recommendation, conceptual recommendation, to the village board at their October 17th meeting. So if the board were to have any feedback or suggestions on any of the ideas proposed or additional ideas, this would be a great opportunity for that, or before or during the committee's meeting next Monday. The committee is also working with an artist and volunteer to design a sesquicentennial themed flag in addition to redesigning the official Village of Riverside flag. The committee will be reviewing designs in the near future and ultimately recommending a design to the village board as well. Previously, we talked about the street sign auction. The village board approved the committee's initiative to install new street signs within the village and then auction off the old signs. So the new street signs have been purchased. Public Works will begin installation as soon as they are able. But more interesting, the committee plans on kicking off 2025 through auctioning off the signs in an online format. It is anticipated this will begin in January. We also plan on drawing off some of the more popular signs at the holiday stroll. The committee has also been partnering with the Historical Commission, who prints an annual calendar with relevant historical photos. But this calendar in 2025 will also include village events, community organization events, school district events. And we're working with those organizations to kind of brand all those events for the sesquicentennial, but that hasn't been completed yet. The committee will also be putting together a 75-year time capsule. It is desired that this time capsule be placed in a cornerstone of a potential new village facility. The committee is also considering putting together a second time capsule and kind of using it as a fundraising mechanism whereby residents and community groups could purchase caplets or slots to put their own documents and materials in. And then the big event of 2025, the committee has worked with the Parks and Recreation Department and will be hosting a homecoming weekend from Friday, August 8th through Saturday, August 9th. The weekend's tentative festivities will include the third concert in the park, followed by Saturday, a festival and car show. Parks and Rec will also be hosting a pizza and pajama party night for the kids, while the adults can attend a sesquicentennial soiree at the train station. Other events of note that some community organizations are putting together include the opening reception for Riverside 150 at the library on January 15th, 2025. School District 96 will be doing a sesquicentennial choral concert in April of 25. And then the Riverside Theater Guild will be performing a play featuring a series of one-act vignettes for the sesquicentennial. This performance will serve as an ode to the centennial play At the Bend in the River from 1975. And then just some other brief things of note, we'll be selling some sesquicentennial themed merchandise, including, but not limited to, stainless steel water bottles and some commemorative keepsakes. We've also been working with Tourism Bureau Visit Oak Park to kind of get the word out to the Enjoy Illinois Office of Tourism. So didn't know if Trustee Gallegos or Marcia Osga had anything else to update on, but that is what I have.
Thank you, Ethan. Before I open it up for discussion from the board, I wanted to thank our co-chairs, Trustee Gallegos, Trustee Marcia Osga, who have chaired this committee. They've been meeting every month and doing a lot of extra work on behalf of the village. Also, I want to thank the committee members, resident volunteers who've also volunteered their time to prepare for this, and that includes Diane Silva, Sheila Gentile, Colleen Incandela, Jane Lordson, and Aaron Weiland. So thank all of the volunteers for for taking charge of this important project. And that, Aberdeen or Alex, do you have anything you'd like to add before we?
Well, I would just like to say that's a great broad overview, and the door is certainly open for, community groups and individuals to take ownership of different pieces of this. I encourage everyone to come out to the open house that we're going to have on Monday the 7th at the library, 7 p.m. That will be a great opportunity to sort of feel out what time scales and commitments would be for different events and different roles. And I mean, you can do as much or as little as you can. We welcome everyone in every capacity.
Alex, anything you want to add?
Part of the festivities very well might include a dunk tank. So all elected officials will be subject to that, just forewarning you now.
I thought that went without saying, Alex.
Just putting it out there.
We'll keep that in mind. Trustees, any comments or suggestions? I had asked the committee and staff to put this on the agenda for an update so that you all the trustees had an opportunity to review it and give any feedback that you want. You could do that now, or of course, anytime you can contact Jessica or Ethan and give your feedback on what the committee's doing. Any further discussion? Anyone from the public would like to speak to this? Seeing none, no action is necessary. Trustee Mateo, sorry.
Well, will there be a water fight in Big Ballpark?
I want one so badly, I get outvoted every time.
Who's voting?
Everyone against me, as far as I know.
Well, that's disappointing.
Well, I will say that we are mindful of the fact that our actual sesquicentennial date falls that first weekend in August, and it could be very hot. So we will, make a contingency plan if we have really inclement weather, that there will be some sort of water feature incorporated into the festival in the park.
It's not the same. I'm with you, Alex.
I know.
And you're referring to the fire department?
Yeah, with
spraying.
Oh,
barrels.
yes.
Come on.
Okay.
And the mud fights that follow after that?
I mean,
It
not
is
more,
homecoming.
But yeah, as a kid.
Thank you, Ethan, thank you, committee chairs. We'll move on.
Manager Francis, our insurance policy would cover us for that, right?
Oh, I don't think the risk management pool would.
Don't ask questions.
All right, on that happy note, come to the open house and we can
Yes.
discuss further.
Yes.
Pending business. First item on this part of the agenda is engagement summary presentation by Barry Dunn, Director Malchiotti.
President Pollock, Village Trustees, Manager Francis. At a previous meeting, a summary was provided of the community survey, but in an attempt to cast the widest net possible and gather feedback in a more casual and personal manner, Barry Dunn also conducted a dedicated engagement initiative. This consisted of a social pinpoint online engagement, in-person engagement at events, focus groups, and stakeholder meetings. At this time, I would like to turn things over to Elsa Fisher and Nikki Ginger of Barry Dunn to walk you through the engagement summary.
Thanks, Ron. President Pollock, Village Trustees, Village Manager Francis, thanks for giving us time. We know you have a full agenda, and we know we spent a lot of time with Jeff a few weeks ago. So big difference between the statistically valid survey and all of the information that we're going to go through tonight. I know Ron provided our full summary, which is probably 30 pages of all the details. We're going to give you just some highlights tonight and then give you an opportunity to ask any questions. So on the next slide, quick agenda. So we'll talk about the in-person engagement that we did at your events. We'll go through some highlights from the meetings with all of you and the advisory board, the Park and Rec board, not advisory, Park and Rec board. Give you an overview of the focus groups that we conducted, talk a little bit about the social pinpoint site, and then we'll give you just some what we feel are the high-level key themes from engagement, and then give you an opportunity to ask questions, and then we'll talk about next steps. Next slide. So there's Nikki and Steve Conters from Hitchcock Design Group at our setup, and I know we saw many of you at these events. Next slide. So the in-person engagement, we had 7 events planned. We actually ended up having 6 because one of them was rained out. The August 16th concert was rained out. We gave people 5 different activities to interact with us at the events. They could vote with Play Money. So how would you like the village to spend your tax dollars to improve parks and recreation in Riverside? There was some dot voting. So what new programs would you like to see? And then we asked people, what park do you visit most often? And what park do you feel needs the most improvement? And then we asked for some suggestions for park improvements and playground improvements. And then lastly, we collected names at all of these engagements for people to participate in focus groups. And I'm going to take turns with Nikki here.
Okay, so the first thing that we want to highlight for you is we have these boxes, comment boxes, that allowed residents, after we gave them $20, fake dollars, I have you know, they were $4 $5 bills. And we gave them 6 different options of where they could place that money. And we had a sign in front of it that said, how would you spend your tax dollars regarding the Village of Riverside Park and Rec Department? And rising to the top was improved playgrounds, more trails, and preserving green space. Now, improving playgrounds is the first example at 153. That's the number of single bills that were in there, not the multiples of 5. So we can figure out that each one of those numbers by multiplying by 5. Then you can see we had other components in there, like additional space and others. Then on the next slide we have here, we also asked them, go right ahead. We also asked them, what type of programming would you like to see? So on this board, it was a board that had a dozen or so different programming options. It was both in English and Spanish, and it also had imagery so that they could, using stickers, identify what they'd like. We had 3 different types of stickers for youth, teen, and adult. And these totals are all of the stickers for those that were under those categories. So rising to the top again was environmental and nature, with 71 votes, visual arts was 60, and then closely following behind was fitness and wellness and general sports at 58. Okay. Another thing that we asked, and you can see this is the example here on the left-hand side, we gave everyone a dot and said, what park do you and your family use the most? Just to get an idea. And there was a lot of, the top 3 parks were pretty close, Swan Park being 28, Turtle Park with 25 votes, and Harrington Park with 23. Next slide. And then we asked them, okay, based on all the parks that are in Village of Riverside, which one needs the most improvement? Which one needs the most love? Turtle Park by far was the one that had the most votes with 35, followed by the Scout Cabin at 19 and Harrington Park at 13. Next slide. Then we had a sheet with each one of the individual parks, and we gave everyone Post-its, and asked them, what type of improvements would you like to see? So this is more like an open-ended question. The top requests were a zip line, which is a perfect example here on the left-hand side. We weren't thinking zip line over the river, zip line, small one inside of each park. And then more structures to climb on, like monkey bars, and upgrading equipment. Next. And similarly, we said, okay, so what kind of park improvements would you like to have? So we had each one of the parks listed, and the most responses we received were about improving ADA access, splash pads, and more shade. Okay.
So as I mentioned, we solicited for people to participate in focus groups when we were at all of these events, and Ron and his team also reached out to many people who have participated in programs. Ron did a notice on Facebook, which also generated lots of interest. So we actually got feedback from 20 people, and the department's strengths that were noted over and over and over again throughout the focus groups was that they found the staff to be easy to work with, flexible, organized, and open to feedback. People appreciated the variety of affordable programs, and the events, everyone talks about the events. The Riverside is known for events, and particularly your 4th of July events. Next slide. So when we talked about improvements, and some of these are going to be the same as what Nikki reported from the in-person engagement, but this is focus group now. We heard a lot about improving accessibility in parks. People talked a lot about adding more pickleball courts and improving the maintenance of the existing courts, increasing maintenance in some parks, updating playgrounds. Playgrounds we heard throughout all of the engagement. Really important item for people. And then new amenities, people are interested in a splash pad. People would like some real bathrooms in some of the heavily used parks and drinking fountains. And then the other item that was noted quite a bit was increasing connectivity between parks and from neighborhoods to parks. And specifically, people talked about the path at Swan Pond and connecting from Hoffman Dam to the Scout Cabin. Next slide. So then we talked about facilities. So the improvements that we heard were an additional indoor programming space, potentially a new rec center, although that conversation also came along with, well, we want a new rec center, but where are we going to put it? So that was a conversation. People noted that the Scout Cabin needed a little bit of TLC. They wanted additional maintenance and enhancement of existing facilities. People talked about adding a band shell or an amphitheater at some park. People really liked the summer concerts and thought with a permanent structure, maybe there could be more programming in that regard. And then there was also conversation, this isn't really a suggested improvement, but there was also conversation about, is there the potential for the village to work a little bit more closely with the schools to increase the use of the schools for programming? Next slide. So in terms of new programming, the river came up often as people just want more access. So water safety, kayaking, fishing, those are the types of programs that people talked about. In parallel, people also suggested more programs in the outdoors, whether it's nature walks, bird watching, biking, or history walks. And then programming for specific age groups, whether it's early childhood, adult sports, or senior programming came up as needs, so that age group. And then people were interested in some types of educational courses, so photography, gardening, learning a foreign language. And then lastly, people love your concerts, and people who love the concerts want more and more and more concerts. Next slide. All right, social pinpoint.
So we had a tool, an online tool that allowed residents to keep track of progress of the planning, and then also provide different types of feedback. So the area that you really want to recognize here is we had about 533 visitors and 131 contributors. The views means how many times a page was viewed, and then the visits could be the same individual over and over again. So in total, though, we had 533 visitors, 131 contributions, and of those contributions, we had 49 post-its on our ideas wall, 43 comments on the interactive map, and 39 responses on budget priorities. Okay. So breaking that down, the Socials Pinpoint had this ideas board, which was basically a post-it board or a virtual post-it board where individuals can go out and grab a post-it, type up an idea, and share that. Most of the votes or most of the suggestions fell under the realm of parks, 61%. And in the park suggestions, and you're going to notice this trend we keep talking about, is requests for updating playgrounds. Also enhancing amenities and improving maintenance. The second most popular item was recreation programs at 13 comments or 27%. And there was requests for expanding programming, to have more programming, better managing program offerings. And what that meant was we had feedback that individuals were disappointed when classes would get canceled due to low enrollment, or that they want it to be promoted more so more people know about it. Then we also had 5 comments on trails, and then just 1 comment on natural resource management. Okay. On the interactive map, which had a map of the village of Riverside, individuals can go there and pin a suggestion, a loved place, or a strength, or a challenge on the site. We received 23 suggestions. Once again, pickleball came up, which it does everywhere. It's not a surprise at all. Those updated playgrounds, improving safety, increasing benches. There's that improving marketing again. and maintenance of trails, and then increasing trash receptacles for cleanliness in the parks. We had lots of good feedback about places that residents love around the village of Riverside, the appreciation again for all those community events, and then some of the challenges, once again, outdated playgrounds. To complement the in-person and statistically valid survey, we had that same budget question. This time we gave them $100, and we said you could spend the money any which way that you wanted. Once again, updating parks and playgrounds came up to the top with over $1,800 spent in that category. Followed closely, well, not closely followed at all, but almost $1,000 difference to trail connections.
Okay, so looking at all of the engagement that we conducted, we came up with 4 categories of some high-level themes. And the first, parks, not surprisingly, increasing ADA accessibility, replacing playgrounds, adding more shade, benches, tables, and trash cans, increasing the trail connectivity and information regarding trails, improving some drainage issues, adding permanent restrooms to heavily used parks, and adding a splash pad. So those are the key themes from parks. In terms of recreation programming, which I think is next. Nope, facilities. Improve the scout cabin, increase usage of the schools, and consider adding new indoor space with a gym, fitness, and multipurpose spaces. In terms of programs, create new programs for early childhood, youth, adults, and older adults, and then improve the quality of some existing programs. And the last category is communication. And under communication, more program promotion, that came up often as a need. Improving the functionality of the website, there were some frustrations noted about that. And then enhancing the information regarding how to use the registration system. So those are the high-level themes from the portion of the engagement that we conducted. And at this point, does anybody have any questions about our engagement, what we worked on?
Questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just
Trustee.
have a question between the information that was presented last time, which was a survey that was, explained would be representative of the village as a whole, and then this process, which engaged, it seems like significantly fewer people. How do these differences in feedback, how
Yeah.
do you reconcile those?
So it's, whenever we do this type of a planning effort, as Ron mentioned, we want to try to cast a wide net. The statistically valid survey was 300, correct? And we probably talked to about 250 people total at all of the engagement. So the numbers aren't that much different, but this is not statistically valid. These are people sharing their opinions either by joining a focus group or going online or participating at one of the pop-up events. So it's just another way to gauge input. But when you compare what we learned to what Jeff learned, there's not a whole lot of difference. I mean, it's really quite similar with what people are looking for. So it's not that one's better than the other. It's just giving people an opportunity. And the other piece about the website is it's not just gathering feedback, but letting people know this is the project, these are the phases, this is the timeline, this is why people do it. Part of it is an education tool as well. But 2 very different components providing feedback for your final planning effort.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the board? Anyone from the public have any comments? See none. This is for information purposes only, no action to be taken, so thank you for
Yeah, thanks for
coming
allowing
and
us to
presenting
come.
this. I think it's some really good information. I am impressed by the specificity of some of this, that, yeah, we could use this as really direct guideline on what we should be doing.
Yeah, and I'm sure you all know this, but we talked to so many people who said, well, I raised my kids here, and they grew up and they moved away, and now they're back and they're raising their kids here, and it just says so much about your community. And people love your community for the green space and the river and, the outdoor activities. I mean, it's not often when we do this type of engagement where outdoor stuff comes before indoor stuff. But in your community, that really resonated with us. Just next steps, just before I end here. So we're going to finalize the park and facility assessments. So Williams Architects looked at all the indoor facilities. Hitchcock Design Group looked at all the parks. We're going to meet with the Park and Rec Board later this month, go through all those results, and then we'll come back and share that with you. We're starting the benchmarking task. We've met with staff, come up with the questions, figured out which agencies we want to benchmark you to, and then we'll start the recreation assessment. So that's what's coming up next. So thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Following on a similar topic, presentation and update by Williams Architects regarding public safety space needs and community space needs analysis. Manager Francis.
Thank you. We do have a representative from Williams Architects here this evening, Andrew Dogan, who will guide the board through some items based on the feedback actually that was provided by Barry Dunn from their different feedback. They're looking to solicit feedback from you all and look at next steps as part of the facilities analysis and where we go from here at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, President Pollock, trustees, Manager Francis. My name is Andy Dogan from Williams Architects. I'm one of the managing principals of the firm along with Mark Bushhouse. Both he and I have been working on this effort to look at the future of public safety and community space here in Riverside. So we wanted to give you an update tonight because after our last presentation, when my partner Mark presented to you back in August, we learned of the Barry Dunn findings and the survey results and the desire to explore the potential for gym and track space in addition to other community spaces within the facility. So we've taken a little bit of a detour in our process to see how that could potentially work in concert with the rest of the program elements that are on the table and see how that could particularly work in a phased approach if necessary. So next, please. So we've now been before this board in this process, I believe, for the third time. So we've thoroughly reviewed your space needs. We've looked at opportunities for shared space and maximum efficiency throughout. This is really one of the most, I would say, integrated programs between police and fire and public safety in terms of sharing resources and sharing spaces that we've ever worked on as a firm. So at the last meeting with Mark, I understand, I know he presented 3 different directions that this project could potentially go in. And it sounds like the consensus was really to look at this overall complex as something rather standalone, not something that is that utilizes the police and fire facilities that are here, but something that can really have its own identity, perhaps be connected to the township hall, perhaps not, but something that can maximize most of the site. And as you'll see, that becomes very important when it looks at how we look at how we can possibly fit all of these things on the site. So we mentioned that, and we'll go ahead to what we've been looking at for the last few weeks. And we were scheduled to present at your last meeting. We appreciate the couple extra weeks to have thought some of these options through a little bit more thoroughly because it's a very interesting challenge to fit all of these different pieces into a very limited site area in an appropriate and meaningful and feasible way. So we looked at, can this complex accommodate the needs of a gym and track, the community rooms that we've previously discussed, that kitchen, and a fitness center. So the next few slides here we can just go through very quickly, just show a few of these examples of the types of large community space we've been looking at in concert with 1 or 2 smaller spaces for different types of groups. a teaching and catering kitchen that can be used for programming as well as events that happen in the larger space, a fitness center that could be potentially shared between staff and the public, and a potential gym space. So this particular gym, this happens to be the project we completed in Forest Park about 5 years ago for their park district. This has a full high school 84 by 50 court running in the long direction with cross courts and then a track running around the perimeter of it. Our plan that we're looking at tonight proposes that that track would be actually elevated, so there's more floor space. But the size, when you look at the plan, when you look at the overall size of the gym, this is a very similar size and character to what we would be looking at for this site. So we wanted to show you how we potentially get there. And knowing that finance is a concern, we looked at a potential three-phase approach to go from what may be more attainable in the near term to address public safety needs, to a midterm solution that incorporates more community space, like that large meeting room in the fitness center, to a larger solution that someday incorporates that gym. So what we'll take you through is a progression that shows how we get from this existing, or a first phase, to a build out of the site, including all of those elements. So next, please. So what we look at as a phase one is just a way to maximize the amount of surface parking we have, get public safety taken care of by building fire and police facilities. So down below there is covered parking for staff and police. On the main level we have an apparatus bay, support for public safety, and 29 outdoor parking spaces that at some point in the future would actually become underneath a gymnasium. Next. And then on the upper level of that, we'd have more support facilities for public safety. Living quarters, more offices, support, and then the open area of the apparatus space, since that's a taller space. Next. Moving on to a future phase, we would expand that facility to incorporate more of the core police program and public community spaces. So again, here we are on the lower level in the basement, where we're able to get 19 indoor spaces, some of the support spaces for the facility. On the next level, we now expand to get more administrative space for police, lobby space, a little bit more public space on the main level. Again, the parking does not yet change in this concept because we're not yet looking at the gym. And then the upper level, moving up to the upper level, you'd enter through a lobby close to the Township Hall entrance, come down a corridor, there would be some support space for public safety. And then eventually what we get to is, let's see, I believe there's one more actually on here, yes. So we have two levels, and then above that, to get this all to work, we have a level that has 3,500 square feet of community room space, community space. So this 3,500 square feet would hold that large meeting room, which would be about half that space for Riverside TV, that catering kitchen, and a fitness center. It's just shown generically as a block for where this would all go in the same area. Next. And then the third phase of this would be, let's see how we can add a gym to this complex. So in this concept, the parking that was previously outdoor now becomes covered underneath the gym. And as we go up the next few levels, not much changes here, except that we have the gym with the running track on that main level. If we go to the next level, you see the track in the other space, and then going up the next level are the community spaces. So Easy to show on plan, a little hard to visualize three-dimensionally, right? So we've also prepared some three-dimensional images just to show how this kind of all stacks out. So in the first phase, you can see how that overall massing and height relates to the existing village hall. We thought it very important, even though we're not really getting into architectural design yet, to understand the scale and the mass of this, especially relative to the surrounding town hall and other buildings in the neighborhood. So that's our first phase. If we go to the next slide, phase 2 adds space that sort of sits back from everything else so it doesn't become overwhelming. From the street perspective, you can kind of see how those 4 different levels of space stack. And then on the next slide, it shows how we start to get all of that entire program of the gym, running track, and all of those community spaces and public safety into the plan. So it's a phased approach, a potentially 3-phased approach if finances dictated that were to be possible or necessary, I should say, to making this work. It is a very dense arrangement in terms of maximizing the site, but it does, other than concerns about parking, it does technically work. Now we'll talk about costs and preliminary budgets in a moment, which is obviously part of the conversation. But before we go there, can I answer any questions about the concept or these phases or how this would possibly work?
Question, in phase 2, if I'm following your wonderful pictures here. In phase 2, on the 3rd level, there's 3,500 square feet of space.
Can we go back one, you think?
But it's not necessarily built out. Is that the same square footage that in phase 3 would accommodate that track and gym concept?
No, the 3,500 square feet, which would be that all of that community space, it would actually be built. We're just showing it as one mass, so we can figure out how to divide it up later. That community space in phase 2 is represented by that purple block on this diagram. So that would actually be on the 3rd level above grade. And then the track and the gym would be part of phase 3, the next phase.
Got it. So in that phase 2, so it's in phase 2, it's that 3rd level that is the first thing that's more community oriented and less about village infrastructure needs.
Correct.
And in that space, there's a meeting room and perhaps a kitchen in that.
Yeah,
concept.
the 3,500 square feet would incorporate a meeting room, a kitchen, it would incorporate fitness, it would incorporate Riverside TV. So all of those different space types that we showed, except for the gym.
Sorry,
in
okay,
this
just to make sure I understand. So you're proposing in phase 2 to give us that 3,500 square feet of space and put in a community room, a kitchen, and fitness.
That is correct.
Got it. And fitness being gym equipment.
Yes.
As opposed to.
I showed that sample.
the gym.
I showed that sample image of
Yeah.
a fitness center. So cardio equipment, weights, that sort of thing.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, trustee.
Yes. Is the exterior massing color code, the purple community multi-purpose, depicted accurately on the drawing?
I think we may have a conflict between, I think I understand your question here. So it looks like we have community space towards the front that would sort of be attached or adjacent to town hall.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. It ends up being lobby and circulation space for the entire expanded complex.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, I think, the preference that I have would be that the community space is all river facing. And I don't mind if the massing of the building or structure comes out more towards the street. If it's, public safety and, police oriented. But I think it's really critical for this project to have the community be able to access and enjoy those river views.
Yes, and that's exactly what we try to do in this concept here. Obviously, we want to have an entrance to that complex closer to the street, but we enter from there, work our way up through a lobby, stairs, and elevator, and then have that space towards the back on that third floor that would have that river view. You know, one thing that we could do, it's not really easy to see in this particular image, but you'll notice that the community space is on a third floor. We have other space adjacent to it down one level. So we could put an outdoor terrace on that roof, for example, to have some outdoor programming spaces. We could put a deck off of the third floor programming space overlooking the river. So there are also some opportunities for some outdoor terrace type space as part of this. And we're just at such a conceptual feasibility level, it's hard to really show all of that at this point.
Understood.
Thank you, great question.
Any other questions?
I do have a question. For me, the numbers aren't adding up, and I think it's because they're being counted differently. So when your team first did an assessment of our police and fire needs, it was suggested that we want 32,000 plus square feet.
Mm-hmm.
But on one of the slides here, again with phase 3, it says it's only about 25,000 square feet.
I'm not sure I'm following, I'm sorry.
So Clerk Stoll, if we can go to, do you have page numbers?
Can't see any on here, but
204? Or is this a separate file?
this is a PowerPoint, so it's not the packet.
Well, the one that says Phase 1 plus 2 plus 3 preliminary budget.
Okay, when we get to the budgets, which we
Oh, okay.
haven't reached yet. Okay. We can, would you like me to answer that now or go through, address your question when we talk through the budgets?
Well, it's not budget related, it's
Yeah.
just that's where the numbers
Okay.
are.
We
So there
have-
it says, total public safety space, 26,030, whereas the original assessment recommended 32,630.
I will, that's a very good catch. I'm honestly not sure what the discrepancy is,
Okay.
so I'll need to find that out.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions so far?
See, thank you for that. If we could, was the next slide from this just that, so this was just a very, very preliminary idea of the potential scale of this and what something could look like. It does not have to be sympathetic to the township hall, but there are some opportunities to mesh the two together. And I think what we try to do in these scenarios is to make the building feel less massive right from the street and work our way back. Which is, so that reason, as well as the desire to get the public space on the river is what really drove that. So just gives you an idea of how that masses out. The architecture, the expression, the materials are all up for discussion. And this is very early, but we want everybody to see just what that would potentially mean in context. Okay? And then moving on to budgets, we wanted to show this as a phased approach. And one thing we do want to make clear is that we were looking for a way to phase this that would get a first phase under the $20 million mark so that you could have a meaningful project that would fulfill village needs sooner. So that's part of why in this particular concept, the public safety space is lower, just because that full program meets this budget. So here we're showing not only the construction costs, but what we would call the true costs of the project. Getting a constructor. We've placed a couple years of escalation into this, figuring that it would be a couple years before you would actually construct something like this. If something happens sooner, that could come down. And then soft costs are just a general placeholder for professional services, furniture, and surveying, things of that nature. So everything is very rangy at this point. So that first phase that's public safety focused is a total project budget of roughly between 14.1 and 15.6 million. If we move to the next phase, again, we'll have to check that public safety figure number for you to see where that came from. We're looking at all of these as what does it mean to start adding these spaces. So this was adding the balance of the public safety space program as well as that first phase of community space. So it's not just the 3,500 square feet, it's some of the circulation space that is needed to connect the rest of the complex. So that community space, because it's on a third floor, has different appointments and finishes from what we do for public safety becomes more expensive per square foot. So you start to see how that impacts the overall cost of the project. So again, this represents phases 1 and 2 if they were done as a singular project. And then going to all 3, including the gym, which would be the next slide. This shows what happens when we add that 16,000 square feet or so of additional space, and it drives the budget upward accordingly. So some fairly big numbers. One question I am sometimes asked is about the cost of doing something like this versus building a recreation center somewhere else, and our answer is at this point we just don't know if you can do that because we don't know of your available sites or those possibilities. But if a site were to become available, that's certainly something that could be explored in comparison to this concept. So there is definitely, because it's a tight site and because we're doing a lot of stacking of space, there is a premium associated with doing that, but it does bring all of these program components together onto this site and really becomes a community center for the village. So can I answer any other questions? We will check on that square footage and get back to Manager Francis about that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Assuming we were to move forward with a project of this scale in these 3 phases, and let's assume we had the budget for it and that it wasn't something we had to wait for budgeting on, what's a realistic construction timeline for a project of this size?
Good, really good question. So I would start off by saying in any of these concepts, there's probably a good 9 months of design and construction documents to really hone in on what we need to build, make sure it's on budget, get the permits and approvals that we need to do something like this in this historic neighborhood. But following that, I would say something like the first phase, or even if it were the first 2 phases done together, are probably a 14 to 16 month project. I think something with the gym could possibly take 4 months longer than that just because of the complexity involved.
14 to 16 after the first 9 or all
Yes,
in? Okay.
yes.
And that's if we were to do the first 2 phases together?
Yeah, and I think either just the first phase or the phase 1 and 2 would go along the same timeline. That third phase adds a little bit more complexity to the construction process and may take a little bit longer to put documents together if you were to do it all at once.
Are you able to hazard a guess at the economies of scale we can achieve by doing the 2 phases, phase 1 and 2 together, rather than phase 1 and then wait some time in phase 2?
We're actually showing what these costs would be to do them all together tonight. So what I would say is there is probably additional cost beyond this, unfortunately, to do them as phases, because we have the passage of time between phases. You know, if we don't know exactly when they're planned, we have to make a guess as to inflation and construction escalation. Right now, the market is telling us 4% a year. I tell a number of my clients that if I was able to predict inflation perfectly for the next 10 years, I could make a lot of money with that knowledge and wouldn't need to do my day job. But anyway, it's 4% a year has been about normal for cost escalation. So if you'd like, if you're interested in further data, what we could do is show you some potential scenarios where we do one phase, we wait a couple years, do another phase, wait a couple years, try to gather, put a reasonable escalation factor on that, and give you that information. Just, of course, there's the understanding that nobody can really predict what inflation will do.
That's helpful. I think I'd missed that in the presentation, that
Yeah.
this proposal is predicated on moving through the phases sequentially and in short order, not.
Yeah, we're showing the options for different, actually, we're showing the options for different sizes of projects that you may choose to do in the short term. So there would be some phasing involved within each of the projects to make it work logistically. You have buildings to tear down. You have to maintain public safety service of some nature during all of this time, and those are details that have to be worked out. But that's really what we're looking at. It's different options of different scales of projects that you might undertake at one time. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So based on your answer to Trustee Clarity, what I'm about to say is incorrect, but,
Okay.
so Phase 3 adds $15 million to the project. That's not accurate based on what you just said, but let's say it's $15 million. Can you guesstimate how much would be for the 23 underground parking spaces versus the gym itself?
You know, my best guess, honestly, is that, you know, those parking spaces are already there. We just have to do some reworking of the space and put some structure in to make that gym happen. So I would say at least 85% of that cost is attributable to the gym space versus the parking.
I misunderstood. I thought for Phase 1 and 2, that was surface parking.
It's surface parking, and then we build the gym on top of it.
Oh, I
in
see. It's
phase
not
3.
going underground.
Yes.
All right, thank you. This is,
Sorry if that wasn't clear.
this is very exciting.
It would appear it would get the appearance of underground parking because there'd have a lot of column supports, and we'd want to do something to make sure it didn't just look like a parking garage, that it was a nicely considered building.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I would like the trustees to discuss and comment on two numbers that I think are related. One is the cost, that's obvious. The other is the parking. We're putting a whole lot in a small space, and I could see the potential for some real challenges with parking. Where do people park? I mean, I suppose we could ask for some type of parking analysis on how many, you know, when this thing is at its max occupancy, how many cars are we talking about? Maybe that would be helpful. But I'm very concerned about it because we're already, I mean, we don't have a parking problem in this neighborhood, in this part of downtown. I don't think. I'm here all the time and I can always find a space, but there's not much extra. You add a gym that serves, you know, maybe 100 people at a time, while you still have public safety activities going on, that may become a concern, but I want to hear your thoughts and comments on that. The other number is the cost, and it relates to the parking in part, because when we met with Williams Architects, one of the questions I had is if we took this recreation facilities and just built our own building on a piece of land somewhere else, would it cost more, less, the same? I believe the answer was, not counting acquisition of property, it would be less.
It's going to be less simply because we don't have to put it on stilts. We don't have to put it on the third
Right.
floor of something else.
But, so I guess my point is, and I want trustee feedback on this, is one could argue that the right move is to separate the two things and look to purchase land somewhere and build the parks or the recreation facility separately. I love the idea of having it downtown. I love the idea of putting it together with this, and if we had a parking garage next door, I wouldn't think twice about it. But I know we don't want a parking garage, nor do we have space for it. So I just want your feedback on that, if you think that's a concern, or if you would like more information about that. Yes,
I would like to
Alex.
look at other possibilities. I think that's very important on that matter, just parking alone.
What'd you say? I couldn't hear.
Oh, I would like to see what other facilities, other locations would be possible.
Okay.
Yeah, that's worth a discussion at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, the not complete answer, but the incomplete answer to that is, I think you'd be talking about acquiring land, buying land somewhere and tearing down houses or something, because we don't have any land of our own, nor is there vacant land available to purchase. So you'd be looking at, potentially next to an existing park or something like that, buying a number of houses. Yeah.
Agree that it's something we should discuss and consider. I'm a little confused because I think we've had that discussion before, right? We've asked whether public safety should be relocated someplace else, and the feedback that I've gotten the historic view on that was there is no place else that is available or suitable. And so I do think we should discuss it, because I continue to view this riverfront space as valuable to us, and I think there could be a lot of different uses that maybe are more community-oriented or more commercially oriented. If there's another space where we can purchase, perhaps that's where public safety goes, or something to consider there. On the parking point, just to go back to your things you wanted feedback on, I suppose I'm slightly less vexed about the lack of parking. I do think we have a lack of parking here. I also think we're a transit-oriented community. Hat tip to Trustee Marshazga there. And we are a bicycling community, and we are a walking community, and we are a place where people are used to gathering in that way. And so, while of course parking would be nice, I think I could get on board with having what is probably inadequate parking, or perhaps even less parking.
It's a good point. Yeah, other trustees.
I want to say that many descend upon downtown for the July 4th. A lot of extra cars around that time. Yes, anybody?
Yes.
Right, so I think that we can handle a large influx of cars and parking. I don't know if anyone would see that as
Well-
problematic for something that could be an issue every day.
In the summer months, I could see that happening. However, when you get to November through, say, March, April, and you have snow and inclement weather, I think people would prefer to drive to the facilities to use them.
No, I'm saying there's a lot of cars that come downtown for July 4th.
Yeah, but I
And
think
they
there's a
fit.
lot more that walk. You think? In July? I mean, to your point.
There's plenty of people who walk to the train station in the middle of winter too, right? We still have parking available for commuters, and people are still walking in the winter. I get the point about the weather, but
Right.
to support
Yeah.
the point here, if it's the difference between having the thing and not having the thing, I think the community would rather have the thing and have inadequate parking.
Trustee
I just have a question. Is the concept that the public safety facilities that would be built are eliminating the need for what's on Pine Avenue altogether?
Yes, that is the goal.
Okay,
To
so
eliminate
then that
Section 2.
space will become available.
Correct. So it would be, I don't know if it would necessarily have the depth for a basketball court or things of that sort, and it certainly wouldn't be, we wouldn't be able to do underground parking over there. So it goes back to the same challenge of having to have above-ground parking and building on top. It's an option, certainly. I'm trying to, without Andy taking a look at it from the perspective of, do the, the sizing of the basketball court and the other spaces, would it fit on that site? Because and Director Tab is shaking his head, so I'm going to guess no, it would not.
That's a no, a basketball court would not fit over there?
Because we have to remember, there's not a lot of depth over there. And preservation has already opined partially, kind of on the record, kind of not, but basically stating that they would not be a proponent for removal of that well house.
Oh, understood.
So,
on the well house.
so
yeah.
we're talking about basically Station 2, and we have to remember we have different infrastructure adjacent to Station 2 that would have to make sure that if we're building anything, we'd have to handle that particular pieces very delicately because of the infrastructure that's adjacent.
Okay, thank you.
So Phase 2 community room could conceptually include a fitness area, right?
Yeah, that
Open
is
to
the
the
plan.
public.
That is the plan,
Right.
yes.
So I wrote down some numbers from Barry Dunn, and when you asked people were asked, what's your top desire, what's your top 3? The top one was fitness, broadly defined, and only half as many people listed an indoor gym, and then half of that listed a track. So just putting it out there that perhaps a fitness center would be satisfactory based on the feedback we got from the survey.
You know, the only thing I will say to that is, having come from the Parks and Recreation Board, I know how incredibly difficult it is to find gym space to do anything around here. And that's, I mean, I know that from working in a school too. Gym space is absolutely at a premium around here. So there are, I know we had frustrations in the Parks and Rec Board with not being able to offer things because we simply could not get gym space to offer it. So a lot of, like, for example, I know volleyball, the adult volleyball struggled because we couldn't find a gym space. And so that was a hugely popular program that we were on the brink of canceling just because we literally couldn't get a gym to do it. And I think there's a lot of things that if you're talking about saying you want more programming or more programming that involves a gym, there simply isn't gym space to be had because the schools are using their gyms more than they were before because they have more teams and more kids than they were before. And so I know that the idea, you know, as I was listening to the earlier presentation and thinking of it in this, the idea of having more of anything is great and I agree with, but in practice, trying to find a spot to put anything else within a reasonable distance from Riverside is virtually impossible because there's just no space to be had anywhere. And it's super frustrating because I think that we have people who'd be willing to run the programs. We have people who'd be willing to participate in the programs. We just don't have a spot to do it. So that's why I see that space as being really important, is because if we're trying to expand anything when it comes to recreation offerings, there has to be a space to expand into.
I'll just defend the criticality of the gym with an additional point, which is to say, I agree, the gym space would allow us to expand programming. We saw that in the survey. There's some revenue generated from that. So it's not $51 million. Takes a few years probably to reach that amount of additional programming from the gym. But there is some revenue from that. And I think there's some missing revenue in, like you say, programs that we're not able to offer, but there are also programs we are able to offer that other communities can offer better because they have better space. And so we know that we lose people in our programs to surrounding communities because the facilities are better, because they're able to offer better scheduling and better facilities. And so to draw some of these people back home with that gym is also an additional amount of revenue there for offset.
Agreed.
Any other questions for us tonight? I just offer a couple next steps. We have a couple interim meetings to have with staff to discuss some details, but our intention as part of this study is to come before you one more time with a little bit more refinement to clarify some questions that have been asked tonight, to show you in a little bit more detail how the plans work, what exactly is in it, and how the phasing could potentially happen. You know, if this is a project you choose to undertake in some form, we would absolutely recommend that you undertake a parking or a traffic study. They would look at, there are consultants that do this for a living, right? They we'll look at the anticipated demand year-round from a facility, look at all the parking around, and be able to tell you what this facility's impact would potentially be. So that's almost always a step we see in this kind of process when we're introducing this kind of density and multi-use into a downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
So is the board comfortable with proceeding based, having them continue on to the next steps as
Yeah.
is? Or? Yes, Manager Francis.
So just for clarification, then we're proceeding with public safety facility. Are we proceeding with it being on the current site? Because there was some conversation about evaluating other sites, and then we kind of circled back and said there really isn't a viable alternative site. So I just want to confirm that we're all on the same page, that we're proceeding with public safety needs, with the next steps, with Williams Architects, with them coming up with the additional pieces based on tonight's feedback.
I'll just comment, my comments were not meant to state, my view is not that there are no alternative viable spaces,
Okay.
right? I think the other public safety location and the depth limitations there make that not a viable space, but my belief is there are opportunities in other spaces, whether it's through property acquisition or being creative. So I did not want to leave the impression that I agreed that there were no other viable spaces, and that we
Okay.
shouldn't take a look at that.
Because I don't want Berry Dunn to continue down on this path for this site if there isn't consent. I feel like then we may be at a point where we have to pause if the board wants to, again, reevaluate alternative sites for public safety. And not to pressure anyone, but we have the limited tax bonds that we issued that we're already done, finishing up year one, and we've got to wrap up utilizing those resources within basically the next almost year and a half. So I just want to put that out there. I just want to make sure that they have good direction, because I don't feel like I have full direction on what the board would like this evening.
It's a massive project with a staggering price tag. Wonderful project, reasonable price tag, right? You know, would love to see it, but I think it is worth the spend of time, not a lot of time, but a little bit of time to just satisfy ourselves that this is the right spot. My view. Not a traffic survey, with a reconsidering, because I think when we've had this discussion before, and I understand this discussion has been had long before my tenure on this board, right? But when we've had this discussion before, we talked about the viability of public safety being in other locations, and there are particular elements of public safety that have different requirements than a community space. And so I think we probably owe it to ourselves to re-engage on the conversation, are there alternative locations for some of these other things if there is no viable space for public safety?
See, and I feel like we've already gone down that, I mean, and not by we, not meaning me, but like the board has gone down that road of trying to figure out where another potential space is for public safety and haven't really found anything. And again, coming from Parks and Rec, I know that I felt like every 18 months, somebody would come to a board meeting and say, we need a rec center. And as we looked at, the Google Maps overview and everything, like this really was the only potential space we had. And that was, 10 years on Parks and Rec looking, this was the only space we saw that could potentially house a community center type thing. And I feel like this board did really investigate where public safety could go. I feel like we have met that requirement of checking into other spaces, but maybe other board members don't feel like we have.
Well, I just mean realistically, let's think about where we could put emergency vehicles. Are we going to slice a section off one of the parks?
Well,
I don't see that happening.
The trustees are absolutely correct. We have exhausted every possibility of existing land that is immediately available, vacant land we own, et cetera. commercial land. I suspect that if we were to continue to look for alternative locations, either for the rec part of it or the public safety part, we'd have to look at acquiring existing property, homes, buying those homes, tearing them down, and, converting the land to public space. We don't have room in any existing park to do that, nor would I want to do that. And then when you start talking about acquiring land, that gets a little difficult to have that conversation, because you're affecting people's lives. So I think we could look at that. But I think if we look at it, we need to do it with open eyes, knowing that we're talking about eminent domain and those types of issues. And I don't know if this board wants to do that.
I'm not interested in going that route.
Understood. Otherwise, we proceed with this land. We, at some point, do that parking analysis. I'm probably overly concerned about the parking because I've worked in zoning my whole life. And parking's all, but point well taken. This is a downtown, transit-oriented area. It's a walkable community. So maybe the parking wouldn't be that big of a problem. Maybe we can handle that, so.
Just put in lots of bike racks.
Lots of bike racks.
Yeah.
So we would need some kind of soil survey done, right?
Yes,
Excavating?
there would definitely, future steps. Our next meeting, our next presentation is still part of this contracted process we're undertaking right now. We owe it to you as a board and to the community to show in a little bit more detail how this will work, how each of the spaces are represented, so everybody's feeling comfortable that this is in fact a viable solution. We always start at a very generic level with the kinds of diagrams and sketches that you see, and we work towards being specific. If the desire is to continue planning, those are separate discussions that we can have, and other services that we can certainly speak with Manager Francis about.
Shall we proceed with focused on this particular land?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are other things you can do to address parking. There's parking management. I actually was exposed years ago to a private recreational facility where they did valet parking because they didn't have nice, convenient parking. I know that sounds crazy. You're going to work out and you're not willing to park your car and walk, but that's
I've
reality.
been involved with at least 4 projects that have done that, actually.
So.
It's actually not that unusual.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the world we live in.
You don't even have to get the
work out.
closest space to the gym, you can just valet it.
Are you happy with the direction here?
Yes, I
Okay.
have clear direction. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything
Thank you.
else?
Thank you.
Nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Next on the agenda is Village Board Strategic Goals for fiscal year 2025. Manager Francis.
Thank you. If the board recalls, in January of this year, we did a survey to kind of outline and narrow down what the priorities of the community were based on the board's feedback in late 2023 to outline essentially what's up in the PowerPoint, which are the village board goals for 2024 and beyond. And so as part of the budget process, staff has provided their priorities and goals in addition to the various commissions and boards at a previous board meeting, but it is also time to revisit the village board goals to see if anything needs to be added or taken away. Clerk Sol has done a great job of keeping a tally of different items that have been on board agendas and noting what particular strategic goal it falls under. And so that is included in the packet along with total tallies through the last board meeting, I believe. And so basically the items that staff is asking is, does the board want to make any changes? But I also want to note that I've received feedback from a board member with the following items recommended for inclusion on the goals or to revisit for a commission. So I'll just read the two items that I received feedback on, which is expand the goal related to facility needs to include exterior improvement to the historic water tower. And the other item is to re-envision No Mow May initiative to focus on education of pollinator plantings versus not mowing dandelions. This particular item would fall under continue to implement and expand sustainability and environmental health initiatives. If the board was supportive of this particular item, then staff would notify Landscape Advisory Commission so that they can adjust their goals / community outreach and priorities for 2025.
So are you asking that we create like a sub points for these goals with those two? I'm not sure what the...
So for the first one, it would be a little less, hold on, let me find the one related to facilities. So the facilities one does not, it has prioritized options for improved public safety department facilities, Riverside TV studio, community space needs, riverfront access, and pathway connections. So this one would just add water tower improvements. And so staff
Okay.
would
All right, I
wordsmith
see
that
that.
particular one. For the re-envisioning No Mow May, there wouldn't be any change to your initiatives, but it would be redirecting this particular item to Landscape Advisory Commission so that they can change their priorities for next year as it relates to education. Maybe they look at more of an expanded role for native plantings. It seems that their native planting giveaways and sales have been really popular in Riverside, so maybe looking at expansion, education of that, and outreach.
Okay.
Yes.
I do have a question about the goal related to the exterior improvements to the tower. Do we know what needs to be, what we need to worry about on the tower?
So
Does it
there
need to be
have
painted?
been some studies that have been done over the years of the work and the scope. The last study that was done was, I want to say, pre-2020, so it was prior to Director Tab taking over as Public Works Director, about the items that need to be done both within the water tower, and I would ask Director Tab to come up, but I believe it has more to do with venting and some other pieces, but then it would need to be repainted.
Yeah, if you look at the tower now, you'll notice in various spots the paint peeling off the bricks. So the results of the study that were done a number of years ago was, well, why is the peeling? And the consensus seems to be that it's a moisture issue from potentially within. So underneath the floor of the tower is dirt. So you naturally get condensation coming up in there. And the thought is it gets up into the tower itself, and then the only way out is through the mason area, which then blisters the paint and the paint peels. So it's probably a two-phase approach. Address the moisture issue and then repaint the tower. Preliminary estimates a number of years ago is $1 million plus. So we've, and since then, have been looking for grants to kind of address that issue, but have not been able to find anything to date. So, but an expensive issue.
I just have a quick question. Was there an actual technical solution identified at that time? Or was it something that they were just you know,
It was,
making an educated
Yeah.
guess that this was the problem and we might explore this, but we're not sure what the solution is.
the educated guess, right, exactly. That's what it was. The assumption was it was a condensation issue. Work was not further, done as to how it was going to be addressed.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be, installing a vapor barrier below the tower. That's one solution. And then, getting the warm air up into the cold tower, condensation and so forth. But
I might reword the potential goal then and say that maybe a priority would be to investigate what a technical solution would be and how much it would cost, rather than committing to do it. Because we don't know that the technical solution exists for sure. It probably does, but I would be more comfortable
and it might be
investigating it and
yeah.
having a detailed plan as opposed
Right.
to committing to fix it.
And it might be a multifaceted approach as well.
Yeah.
It might not just be the basement. It might be, moisture getting in through existing masonry that, can't get out because of the paint. You have the top of the tower that is probably not sealed tight anymore. But
Wait, is there a basement in the water tower?
there is a crawl space.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So I asked for these two items to be considered. It's our historic water tower. We know there are issues. I wanted it on our radar. I didn't want it not somewhere on there with some verb,
Yeah,
so.
thank you.
No, I think it's good.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to, it in theory, but I just, I think we need to start with the
That's
further
why-
investigation.
That's why I want it on there,
Okay.
if the board agrees.
We'll put language in there, and by the way, these strategic goals will be incorporated into our budget document, correct?
Correct.
So this isn't your final say. If you think of something subsequently, you can let Jessica or I know, and we'll take action on that as needed. And so we'll change that language to reference the water tower. And then the other item is just something to ask LAC to give us a recommendation on next year, right?
Well, it would be just asking that if the consensus of the board is we want less focus on people not mowing and more focus being put towards native plantings, then just pivoting and not really focusing energy or not participating in no mow May and just focusing those energies on the plantings.
Early, pollinator-friendly natives.
Are there any other items from this list of strategic goals for the board that you'd want to modify or change, eliminate, add? Again, this isn't your last shot at it, so we can, if you think of something later on, just let us know, and we'll talk about that again. So, no action to be taken. We'll move on. The next item on the agenda is discussion on noise ordinance revisions. I am going to ask the board, Ashley, I apologize. It's getting late and we have an executive session. I don't know that this is timely in the sense that we need to act on it now. I'm wondering if the board would want to table this.
I moved to table it.
Me too.
Table.
Second.
Can we, if we have some questions or thoughts to add to the next time it comes to us, can we share them with you?
Please do. Absolutely, as always,
Good.
yes.
Okay,
And
thank
I'm
you.
going to
Stop,
ask.
Ashley.
So do we need-
I am open to any other questions in the interim. Certainly, we can provide an updated memo, and if there's any other clarifications that are required, then I'll prep that. So, great.
Do we need a motion or just consensus?
Bob?
Bob, do we need a motion?
No, it's just
No.
a discussion.
Okay, so we'll table this indefinitely and
We'll find a
find
spot
a
on our
good spot.
upcoming
We do-
agenda.
I mean, our upcoming agendas are full because it's budget season. So, but we'll get this back to everybody. I think it's the kind of thing where we want to address before next spring. Exactly. So that's tabled definitely. Next on the agenda is financial forecast plan discussion. Finance Director Zavala. This is a timely matter.
Good evening, thank you. Included in your packet tonight is the financial forecast for 2025 through 2029. Included are the projected revenues and expenses for the general fund and Parks and Recreation Fund, which is now a special revenue fund. There are some matters that require board guidance and I would like to review. And if you have any questions, I'm here to provide as much information as I can. For Parks and Recreation, over the last 10 years, the village has extended a property tax levy that has approximated the minimum rate of 0.0667% per $100 of equalized assessed valuation. The 2023 levy saw an increase in EAV, which in return increased the recreation received portion of the tax levy. The question for the board would be, would the board like to keep the portion of the tax levy allocated to Parks and Recreation at the consistent minimum rate of 0.0667% per $100 of EAV?
Would this increase the overall tax that people are charged, or they would just get a
No,
bigger portion?
it will remain the same from last year.
Okay. So where does that bigger portion come from then?
There is no bigger portion. When the equalized assessed value goes up,
it
the
goes-
the taxing rate goes down. So it's just
Okay,
like an offset.
okay.
So extend it? Should I make a motion to extend it?
Do we need a motion?
It would be,
To-
it's,
For status quo?
yes, to keep
Yeah,
it the
we-
same as last year.
We're just looking for direction, right?
Just for direction, there's no motion to be had,
There's
just
no-
direction, do you want to keep
It's
it the
just
same?
discussion
you know?
to plan for next year.
Okay, so just for clarification, if you changed it from the .0667 up to .09, what would that mean?
It would mean an increase in the levy. That's the maximum rate that could be increased.
So let me clarify that
Yes.
point. It wouldn't be necessarily an increase in the levy because the levy is based on
Yes.
consumer price index. It would mean that what the Village of Riverside collects as a total, more of that would go to Parks and Recreation, less would go to the general fund. So that's why the board, in basically, since I've been here, has always done what is minimally statutorily required, which is the .0667. But this is an item that we have to ask on an annual basis to plan for the budget.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted that stated and clarified that it doesn't mean that, like, it's all coming from the same amount of money. So, yeah,
Just an allocation.
exactly.
Thank you, Manager.
Yeah, exactly. I just thought that was important to know.
Absolutely.
Consensus to keep it
Keep
at
it.
0.667?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Thank you. Next question, the police pension tax levy. Included in the packets are the police pension actuary report and the state actuary report. The actuarial value of assets increased to 42.32%, according to the Lauterbach and Amen actuary report. For the 2024 property tax levy, the recommended contribution from Lauterbach and Amen is $1,837,742, and the state required contribution is $1,631,879. The question for the board would be, would the board like to utilize a recommended or required contribution for the tax levy next year?
Recommended.
I'm fine with recommended as well.
Recommended.
Thank you. The next question, grocery sales tax. On January 1st, 2026, the statewide 1% grocery tax will expire. The village has the option to keep the tax in place without referendum. The estimated loss of the tax expiring would be $45,000 annually, revenue loss to the village. Prior to October 1st of next year, though, the village would have to adopt an ordinance to keep this tax in place. The question would be, would the board like to adopt an ordinance and keep the 1% grocery sales tax in place?
Keep it in place.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Really?
Yes.
I was thinking we would consider letting it go. And the reason is because, well, first of all, from a business perspective for our own local grocery store, it keeps people in town if they don't have to pay that extra tax. And the other thing is, the other issue is that groceries are really expensive. And if we're not in a position where it's required of us to get this revenue and every cent of revenue that we can get, you know, from like issues like this, I think I'd like to consider removing the 1% tax.
I think this is accurate. The reason that the state eliminated the grocery tax, statewide grocery tax, is it's a regressive tax.
Right.
The lower your income, the higher percentage you're paying for a necessity in life, groceries. Personally, I would like to see how we do without it for a year or two. I assume we can come back to this in the future, or can we?
I don't know that we can we?
I
don't know that off the top of my head, I have to double check.
That's how I read it, but maybe that's.
What is it?
Well, to keep it in place without it dropping off, we would have to adopt an ordinance by October 1st of 2025.
Oh, so we have until at least one more year to decide.
Because the tax won't go away till January
Yes.
1 of 2026.
But all of the documentation and everything would have to be sent to IDOR, Illinois Department of Revenue before then and have it approved in order to keep it in place.
So when do you need to know from us that we want to keep it in
Yeah.
place?
Yes, there's a timeline, so we would start the timeline just to make sure that all the deadlines are met
At
next
what
year.
point do you need to know?
It would probably be now because we have to budget for that. So if we're going to budget to lose 45.
We would have to budget in
For
2026.
2026, exactly.
So we have some time
Yes.
for that, for further evaluation to find out if we don't adopt it, is there an opportunity for us to adopt it later? My guess is the timeline for the October 1st date is typically for Department of Revenue, you have to file a quarter ahead of time for any new taxes. And so once you don't hit that deadline, then it goes to the next quarter. So that's my guess, is that's why they have that October 1st, 2025 target date.
Do we have any idea what the villages around, and towns around us are doing?
That's a question I would like to get an answer to. In addition to, if we choose not to adopt it now, can we adopt it in 5 years?
Yeah, and I think it also, in my mind, makes a difference what the surrounding communities are doing as well.
Which is when we had an
Not that they-
opportunity to increase fuel tax by 1% or something.
We did.
That board opted against it because our surrounding communities weren't doing it.
That has changed.
But at the time,
Yes, big time.
I think at the time when we were having the discussion, it was also, we didn't want we were getting a lot of feedback from the different gas stations in town, especially with Costco being there. And so that was, the goal, is to keep these business viable in town. Because right now, because at that point they were competing against Costco. I do believe North Riverside did ultimately enact it.
Yes, North Riverside and Brookfield, Westchester, and Forest Park.
They're all going to.
did the
All
fuel
enacted.
tax.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Did the local fuel tax.
Okay.
And I know that with regard to the grocery sales tax, there are a lot of communities. So like, for example, LaGrange Park, from what I've been told, they're looking at potentially a 6-figure loss.
Yes.
In sales tax. Grocery tax is one of their large producers in sales tax. And so there's other communities where it's even more significant than that. So just kind of from a perspective standpoint.
Okay.
I don't know, I think we are ahead of the curve with having these discussions and kind of planning out our financial future. Because to my knowledge, there hasn't been a lot of discussion, but we can certainly keep you posted on what other villages are looking at doing.
I did project out in the financial forecast for the trustees to see what would happen if the village were to let the tax expire and not renew it. If you look at the municipal sales tax, it is included in there. And you can see the projections for the next 5 years.
And that was suspended for about a year, wasn't it, after COVID?
The state made
Yes.
up the difference.
Oh.
So it was made up at the state level, they suspended it and then made up the difference. So they still remitted.
Okay.
They still made villages whole.
So if we, sorry.
No, go ahead.
If we had to, if we kept the tax, or if we eliminated the tax, would we have to increase a fee or something elsewhere to make it up?
Something due to budget constraints, there would have to be either fees increased or services may have to be reduced.
So I would be in favor of keeping it for now, and if we can find another source to replace it, I'd be open to letting this go, but until then, this is the position we're in.
Is there a recommendation from our financial staff?
I think that's a board decision to be made. I mean, $45,000 is real money, but it's a tiny percentage of our overall budget. Yeah, it's a tough decision, but
I mean, I keep going back to the discussion we had 2 meetings ago, where we were looking at a list of stuff that we had to cut because we didn't have those funds. I mean, we have an obligation to provide services to our residents. This cuts from that, and then we can't salt our streets, we can't do stuff when we need it, and that's a position that I want to be in the future.
I'm just wondering if when all of the other communities around us imposed the extra gasoline tax and we did not, if that made an appreciable difference in the volume of business that our local gas stations got. I mean, were more people coming to fill up at Riverside gas stations because we didn't have the extra gas tax?
We did not, I mean, or
I'm
else we
just-
would have saw a substantial jump in the revenue.
Which we didn't, right?
Correct.
So I'm just wondering.
I mean, I tend to agree with Alex on this, is that unless we can say, and I agree, 45,000 is a small part of the budget, but when, 2 meetings ago, we were talking about things that cost $45,000 that we would have to go without, I would, before I say, yes, let's get rid of it, I would like to see where we make up for that before I say, yep, let's get rid of it. I would like to see where we could potentially, where that thought is that we get the $45,000.
In new fees?
Either new fees or cuts.
Okay. Because cuts mean cuts in service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
so we want to see more information before we decide?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyone else? That's what we'll go with.
Okay. I will gather more information and bring that back to the board. Next question will be vehicle registration fees. In 2019, there was a review of vehicles registered to Riverside addresses but not registered with the village for a vehicle sticker based on the Illinois Secretary of State data. The additional enforcement required individuals to purchase last year and the current year vehicle sticker and pay a maximum fine. The board has also expressed interest on resident feedback, based on resident feedback, in extending the senior hardship discount for vehicle stickers to owners of residences that qualify for the senior freeze exemption. An estimated 239 residence owners may qualify for this discount. That's estimated tax financial decrease in revenue of $11,000. The question for the board would be, there's a two-part question here. Would the board like to initiate a vehicle sticker review in 2025? If so, how far back should the enforcement period go? Should it go 1 year, 2 years, and continue with a maximum fine? And the second part would be, would the board like to extend the senior hardship discount to include the owner of residence that qualifies for the senior freeze tax exemption?
Can I ask, what is a senior freeze? Is that a property tax freeze?
Correct.
Yes.
They just get from their age? It's not
No.
based on any of their?
It is. It's based on financial form they have to fill out every year and qualify for it. They have to fill it out every year. It's $65,000 or less for a household.
Okay.
Age and income.
Yes, age and income.
Yeah, I would be in favor of the vehicle sticker review in 2025 and enforcement period going back 2 years with the fine. I would also be willing to look at adopting that Cook County senior freeze economic standard in lieu of the one that we have that is based on the criteria that's used, I believe, by the Secretary of State, which is it hasn't been reviewed in over 10 years for income adjustment. So I think that this program, unlike where we were talking about with the, 1% grocery tax, there are people who are buying groceries who do not have great economic need as well. And so to eliminate that whole stream it's a serious question. It's a different discussion. Here, this is focused on, people who are clearly, of a certain age and of a lower income. And so we know the benefit that this will bring to these people. And so I would be in favor of changing that standard.
So what's the distinction between somebody who, how do they become qualified for a decrease in their sticker fee now?
Right now, it's if they receive any type of assistance from Department of Aging, such as the discounted plate sticker, the vehicle registration itself, or if they are a veteran, but that's separate. But it's that if they receive any type of state assistance, they qualify, and they have to show a letter stating that they qualify for that year.
So the 2 years that I was at the village tent at the farmer's market, I've had people ask about this. They complain that seniors surrounding us don't have to pay for vehicle stickers or get half off, and so that's why I asked for this analysis. So I appreciate you doing the work on it. I'm in favor of it, but I'm also curious, if we do crack down on the registrations, any idea how much money that brought in? It was a while ago.
Yes.
You don't?
If you look in the chart too as well, for vehicles registration, you can see the spike in 2019, and it went up considerably.
Okay. Which is a one-time thing.
It's a
unless we do it
one-time
again
thing
in
because
5
that's
years.
when the review was done.
Okay. I missed that, thank you.
Yes.
So the suggestion is to initiate the review in 2025.
Yep.
2-year maximum enforcement, and to tie the senior discount to the senior freeze property tax.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that consensus? Very good.
Thank you. Next question, credit card processing fees. Due to the rising costs of credit card processor companies, many municipalities, including surrounding communities such as LaGrange Park, North Riverside, and Western Springs, have opted to have the payer absorb the credit card processing fee. The Village of Riverside still absorbs the cost for all credit card payments made to the village. It's an estimated $50,000 we paid last year in 2023 for credit card processing fees. And in the chart, you can see I broke it down by department. Staff does make a recommendation that we keep Parks and Recreation to continue to absorb the fee because this is an optional program, and we feel like it's enticing to offer free fee payments. So that's the only recommendation I would have.
Question, when I pay my water bill automatic payment, that goes straight through my bank account, correct? And there's no credit card fee?
There's no credit card fees. The village has worked very hard to offer many different ways of payment for the water billing. Just last week, we rolled out a new program that now if you pay your water bill through your bank account, they don't mail us a check anymore. It's going to be electronically sent to us, 1 to 2 day processing. And that's a free option that we offer to the residents now.
Well, I mean, if you look at this, you've made back more than half of what you could, if we got rid of the 1% grocery tax, there's a big chunk of that money made back if we charge the credit card fee.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is, yes, I don't think we should charge it for Parks and Rec, but I think it should be an option that you can add, you know how like, I know when you make a donation to something, it says, would you like to add another 52 cents to cover the cost of the credit card fee or whatever? I think we should have that as an option that you can add in when you sign up for Parks and Rec things, just because I'm sure there are people who would be willing to pay that, no problem. So, but, I mean, to my mind, this is a great way to make up what we just, you know, if we're really gonna look at getting rid of the 1% grocery tax, that could be where we make it up. Especially because there's other options for paying where you don't have to pay it.
And I don't believe that the village should subsidize the credit card fees. When people use credit cards more and more, it's just like in a lot of cases, it's their main form of payment, so. I'm for charging the credit card fees.
Yeah.
I missed something. Were we proposing to exempt Parks and Rec?
It would be staff recommendation, yes.
So it would be 30,000?
Yes, they have sufficient resources to absorb the fee at this time. If that ever changes, we could bring that back to the board to make a decision, but
So then it goes down to 30,000.
Yeah.
yes, it's
Still a big chunk of the 45 estimate.
It is a big chunk. It's police fines, permits, and then water sewer fund.
You see the list of villages that charge credit card fees, and I can tell you from my experience working in different villages, it's very common.
It is Cook County. If you take $50,000 by 10 years, it's a large chunk of money.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of it. Payer absorption.
Yes.
And I like Trustee Coss's suggestion as well as the, optional, would you like to?
We can
Yeah.
look into that.
Look
Staff will look
into the
that.
logistics of that. I think it's a fine idea if logistically it's
Thank you.
doable.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I just do that.
We can look into it.
But
We'll look into it.
I have a question that I'm guessing I know the answer to, but if someone uses a debit card, they still pay the fee, correct?
It's either Visa or MasterCard, and there's still a processing fee based on that. All right, thank you. Next question, 24-hour parking rate. A schedule was previously approved for incremental increases of the 24-hour parking rate and hourly rate that occur at alternating years for each parking type. Included in the packet was a community survey of all surrounding communities that have commuter parking and 24-hour parking along the Metro line. The question for the board would be, would the board like to proceed with the planned rate increase pending approval from BNSF? The rate increase was to increase 24-hour parking from $200 to $210 in 2025.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. And the last question, municipal motor fuel tax. As Trustee Mateo brought up earlier, there are 2024 scheduled street projects that have been moved to future years due to funding. In 2019, the option of imposing an additional 3-cent tax on gasoline to increase motor fuel tax revenue was presented as part of the financial forecast, but the board opted not to proceed with imposing the tax at that time. Staff did research in North Riverside, Brookfield, Westchester, Forest Park currently have a local MFT tax. The tax levy referendum question is scheduled for the November 5th election. for dedicated street funding, but staff would like the board to consider if they would be interested in implementing a motor fuel tax in 2025 if the tax levy referendum does not pass. And this motor fuel tax, it starts in increments of 1 penny. It doesn't go to 3 cents automatically. It would be increments of penny, penny, penny.
I'm assuming
per
that's per
gallon.
gallon, not per transaction.
Yeah. Mhm.
1 cent extra. Yes, I support that.
But we would be revisiting it
Yes.
after the referendum.
Right.
Yes.
Because I have concerns, because we have Big Brother Costco up the street. That impacts our gas stations tremendously, so. But I don't mind holding that in our back pocket.
Exactly.
If we have to. Is that consensus?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And that concludes the financial forecast.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Well
very
done.
much. I think there's one more item for me.
Okay.
Next on the agenda is announcement of 2024 tax levy public hearing.
Thank you. The state of Illinois Truth in Taxation Law requires that not less than 20 days prior to any taxing body adopting its property tax levies, it must determine how many dollars in aggregate property tax extensions will be necessary. The hearing is to be held on October 17, 2024, and is for the 2024 tax levy that will be collected in 2025. The notice will also be published in the Landmark newspaper Wednesday of next week. Thank you.
Thank you. No action to be taken on that. Next is charges for late payments. Is that Clerk Sol?
Yes. Good evening. Quick item for the board to consider here. The village code does not currently have a general late payment provision applicable to all village bills. While certain sections of the code call out distinct late fees or penalties, like water sewer bills, our vehicle stickers, and just general code violations, not all bill types are covered. So staff is recommending the addition of a general late payment provision to the code, allowing a 10% late charge to be assessed to all bills 30 days after they are due, followed by another 10% charge on that outstanding balance per year thereafter.
Is this a discussion item, or are we?
No, this is for action to adopt the ordinance. Any questions?
So, do I understand it correctly? It's if you are late for a month, you get a 10% fee or fine, and then after another year, it's 10%? So there's no fee or fine after 2 months or 3 months or 4 months?
No, yeah, it would just be the initial 10% and then another 10% on that balance, and it just compounds.
At the end of the year?
Yeah,
Per year.
yep, per year.
Is this
Per year?
standard?
Oh,
Yeah,
per year,
per
yeah.
year.
Just not per month?
This is pretty standard in other municipalities. Some example billing items that this would kind of fall under include, like, we bill the school district for crossing guard services, fire department completes fire inspections, for our wireless alarm monitoring for the fire department if someone wants to have alarm in, their apartment building or business or whatever, and false alarms happen after three strikes, we start billing for those. And we tend to experience, I forgot, or, and we're now 3 or 4 years into this thing. And so we need an incentive to kind of get payment and get kind of people to comply with the code and other processes that we have.
It feels pretty generous to go 10% and then not another
Right.
10% for a year.
But that's standard.
But if that's standard,
Yeah, that standard itself is pretty similar in other surrounding municipalities.
Are we able to quantify the impact of this? I mean, how many late payers are they, and do you have a sense for whether it's more individual residents versus commercial or other taxing bodies?
This is not going to be a windfall, and typically the other taxing bodies do pay on time. This is more for those, like Clerk Sol stated, that have the outstanding false alarm activations. We also have prior staff members that are retired that are on our health insurance, that sometimes they don't pay timely, and things of that sort. So this is incentivizing people to make sure that they're making timely payment. For that, business licenses, we have to hunt people down for those, for the renewals, and so that takes staff time. And so trying to have the carrot and the stick. Like, prompt payment, that's your carrot. The stick is if it's not paid on time, then there's a penalty. And so it's no different from how we handle water and sewer billing. Same application, which actually that compounds every month. It's 10% each month that it's outstanding, unless someone has a payment plan. Someone calls us and set up as a payment plan, then we do not assess the penalty.
I think I'm fine with it. I just gently don't want to nickel and dime our residents for technical foot faults, so I hope that you will exercise discretion and generosity when someone is truly not delaying something by 3 years, but just missed it one time.
So what we can do is implement a similar process that we do for water billing. So if someone has had prompt payment for the past 12 months and they just overlook this one bill, there is a waiver process. And so we can look to...
Yeah, this ordinance allows the village manager to waive any fines if she deems it appropriate, given the payment history in the past. Also, to enter into payment plans as well.
I like that practice.
I'm fine with just giving you the authority to make that decision if you don't want it codified that you have to look back for 12 months, but whatever flexibility you require to, be thoughtful.
This is an ordinance, so I will need a motion in a second. There's no one in the audience, I assume, that wants to speak to this. So would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to adopt the ordinance.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Trustee Clarity?
Aye.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Costs?
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
Motion approved. The last item on the agenda is discussion of community solar. For the same reason as with the noise ordinance, I would like to ask if the board would consider tabling this.
I'm fine with that as well.
Sure. Yep.
So we will table this and reschedule it at an appropriate time. Trustee reports. I have just one item that I would like to bring up under trustees' reports. A Riverside business owner recently asked me about the municipal code regulations for retail sales of packaged beer, wine, and liquor, and the potential for changing the permitted hours for such sales. Currently, the regulations do not allow alcoholic beverage sales before 9 a.m. on weekdays and before 12 noon on weekends. The request from the business owner was to allow sales beginning at 8 a.m., consistent with the recent zoning amendment allowing cannabis dispensaries to begin sales at 8 a.m. With the board's consent, I would like to direct staff to begin the amendment process. This is a municipal code amendment, so it would come directly to the village board for consideration. Consensus to proceed, of course, does not commit the board to any particular action, but simply direct staff to bring the issue to the board for further consideration. Is there consensus to move forward with this?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Very good. Are there any additional trustee reports this evening? Seeing none, board does have need for an executive session this evening to discuss probable, imminent, or pending litigation. The board will not reconvene and no final action will take place. I would ask for a motion and second to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.